All right. Well, hi folks, Toby Lineaweaver here. Yet another of our informal discussions about life in the fast lane at Recovering Champions. Today we have a special guest, very special indeed, Jen Rego. And what's your job again?
I'm a case management supervisor.
You're not coordinator of case management?
No.
What's the difference between case management supervisor and coordinator of case management?
I don't think there's much of a difference.
Okay, all right, cool. So, you're wonderful and, you know, and all that, no matter what they call you. So, describe the role of case management. Like, what's case management do here at RCI?
So here at RCI, the way I explain it to the clients is that case management works on the outside issues,
Okay.
right, that clients face. And so what that means is helping them get back on their feet, helping them return to jobs, family, recovery, going to meetings, and self-care.
How do you help them with meetings and recovery? Like finding out where the meetings are in their neighborhood?
Yeah, so we try to help them map out that area. Some clients have been to meetings before, so like they have an idea, and we just talk about like different types of meetings as well.
So a lot of it's psychoeducation about how things work in the real world, recovery-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, some of the issues that clients have to address, not all, but housing.
Yeah.
Not all clients have housing, right?
Correct.
So what percentage of our clients are going to go into sober living or halfway housing, you think?
I say 70%.
70%?
A little more than half, yeah.
Really? Okay. Mm-hmm. What about general finances?
We do that. What's the percentage?
Well, I mean, so some people are coming in here, like a younger kid might be on their parents' insurance, but they themselves have no cash. Mm-hmm. So we have to do things to help prepare them for making it in the real world. So that would be including what, for instance?
So we sign them up. We help get them started with DTA. So it's like some financial assistance, some SNAP benefits. We put them on job search.
What's a SNAP benefit?
It's like food stamps.
Okay.
So we also start them on job search as well.
Right.
You know?
So housing, finances, job search. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a leading question, of course. Not all clients come in with the same kind of experience. Some don't even know. Some clients even have never really worked a job before?
Sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What's the percentage on that?
It's low.
It's low.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people have work experience. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you mentioned the meetings, insurances.
Sure.
Sometimes they might be facing a event horizon with their insurance. They need to transition to another plan or go on the connector product, right? Yeah. Mass Health.
Mm-hmm. We sign them up for that too.
Okay. Transportation.
Yeah.
Like people going into sober living, mm-hmm. getting to job interviews, and
we provide all that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we do provide a lot of that stuff. It's very important. It takes a lot. One way that I describe case management is that case management helps identify barriers in the real world to successful recovery and help clients overcome those barriers so they could have a maximum chance of success.
Yeah.
Okay, you like that?
I do.
All right. So what would you say, just like on average, is like the biggest barrier?
Biggest barrier for any client that we have?
I mean, I know it varies.
You know, it could be that return to work. It could be never have gone to a meeting before.
Not knowing anything about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. It could be. So you're not prepared to say what the number one thing is?
No, because it varies. Everyone's different.
Well, okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the return to work thing, okay? Yeah. So we have clients that come, they've had careers. You had mentioned one client who had been working for a company for how many years?
Almost 20, I think.
20. Mm-hmm. Then she comes back to treatment.
Yeah.
And then she eventually wants to return back to her job. Mm-hmm. But it's not so easy as that, is it?
No, it's not. So one of the things this particular client was aware of was the environment that she was in at this particular employer. So she often sat with case management and she put in what they call bids for different jobs.
Okay.
and different placement. So we would check that weekly to
Well,
see
she
if
was trying to
anything
find a
changed.
safer work environment?
Sure, yeah.
So what was unsafe about it?
There was a lot of people using their, they take breaks whenever they want. There's not really a lot of supervision, so to speak. So
So is part of what you're doing with clients like that helping them assess the safety of their work environment?
sure. Yeah.
Okay. So when you talk to them, like what kind of questions are you asking?
So how's your work environment? What's it like? Stress. Again, some people come from like a using work environment. So if they mention that, if they're forthcoming with that, it's kind of helpful to like talk to them about like what are some other options if they're looking to.
Probably not much different than if you're coming from a household or a relationship where there's a lot of using and abuse. Should you be even going back to that?
Right.
However, we all know it's easier said than done. If you've been working someplace for 20 years and you've built up benefits and all that kind of stuff, and you just might not even be able to really consider that.
Right.
This going on with the same person, what do you think that she was most concerned about returning to work? What was renting the most space in her head?
Going back to that environment and possibly using because of the way it,
So
what
temptation.
with temptation and
Right.
things like that.
So what in a case like that, that's a specific example, what are some of the things that you guys did?
So again, we checked out, her bids and, she asked around to find out if there was other openings in different places. We talked about.
How do we know those are any better than the ones she came from?
She has a lot of experience in that particular job, so
Yeah, okay.
she knows what is going on in other places. So we also talked about boundaries,
What does that mean?
setting limits.
With whom?
Herself and others.
Okay, well, I'm playing dumb here, which isn't too hard to do.
Unusual.
Okay, so explain more about that. Setting limits with herself, boundaries with herself.
So setting boundaries with herself, just making sure that she if they're taking a break at a certain time, maybe she doesn't go out when they go out. Maybe she takes a 10, 15-minute break somewhere else. It's about changing your routine.
Right.
And so in this particular incident, she did go back to that job. So my hope is that the routine was changed. If somebody said, hey, do you want some of this, that she had a go-to line to say
Right.
when offered.
That's something that we do a lot of here is we do scripting with clients, and we do try and anticipate the situation that we're pretty certain is going to come up sooner or later. And rather than them having to invent something to say in that moment, to have already thought it through, have it kind of like in your pocket, to whip out,
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's, so it could be a break at a different time. It could having that answer that protects you from temptation. It could be having maybe a one day at a time book or some other kind of reading that you can pull out to give yourself some comfort and distraction in the moment.
Yeah.
There's a
Even
lot of
like the Serenity Prayer.
Yes,
that gets a lot of people through a lot of different moments that they need to get through, right?
So so when you said boundaries and limits to self, one thing that came to my mind was that, and this I know is true for a lot of people, is that they got bills to pay, they need to get back to work, they want to make up for lost time, they want to reclaim their lost standing at work, and a lot of times they will go back and they'll hit it really hard, they'll work a lot of hours, and that can be a boundary or limit issue too, right?
Absolutely.
So did you talk with this person about that as well?
I did.
Yeah.
And this particular person was pretty okay with the amount of hours that she works full time, not taking overtime,
Right.
not taking on more than what she can handle. Because a lot of times, you talked about reclaiming, your
Standing there, yeah.
yeah. So not taking on too much extra work to say, here I am and I'm going to make up for lost time.
Right. Yeah, what we often say to clients is, if you are an addict in early recovery, and these are all the hours that you have in your life, what percentage of your time and energy has to go into your recovery? And we'll ask them to pick a percentage, and some will say 50 or 60 or 70%. And I say, okay, so say it's 70%, that you really have to, you have to establish your recovery, you have a lot of meetings to go to, your counseling, maybe you're still doing some IOP, or intensive outpatient, that is, and all that kind of stuff. And if it's 70% of your time is doing that, then you only have 30 for the leftovers. Mm-hmm. And can you really expect to work full time? And because what happens is we found is that people that try and jam full-time or overtime work into a scenario like that, the thing that suffers is their recovery time. So instead of 70, they're getting 60 or 50%. And that's a little bit like taking, less antibiotics, and then of course the pneumonia returns. In this case, the addiction can creep back in. So it is a bit of a battle with clients at the beginning to work on boundaries and balance in terms of priorities. The other shorthand phrase that I use, that if you're working too much, it's going to kick recovery off the front burner of your stove. Mm-hmm. And when recovery becomes a back burner priority, then it has potential for, cropping up again.
So that's why with case management and any client, I always encourage that, like, whatever you're going to do out there, like whatever you're doing here, right? So like here we're on a schedule, right? And so I encourage them to take some of what they've learned here and what they're doing here home with them.
So how do you do that? How do you concretize that?
So in case management, we give out what are called like recovery toolkits, and in that particular package, it talks about reasons to stay sober and short-term and long-term goals. The last thing that we ask them to look at about a week or two prior to leaving is their daily schedule, mm-hmm. well, weekly schedule, really. And we sit with them if they haven't already tried to implement some things that they're doing here in that schedule, and we encourage them to do so. So if they're waking up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, we ask them to write that down on the schedule, like take that stuff home with you. Make sure that they put their meeting in, right? So that's why we look at the meetings in the area.
So we want them to build stuff around the meetings, not meetings around the stuff at first.
No, we build our life around the meetings.
Okay, so this person we were talking about has been working for 20 years. You don't think she knows how to make a schedule?
Sure, but guess what?
What?
Sometimes that schedule just isn't working, and we get complacent in what we've been doing for 20 years.
Right.
So it's time for change, and that's what recovery is about, is change.
Yeah. I also think that people's transition, as you well know, is a big source of anxiety, and getting all those details set. And what I tell clients is that the more information you have, the less blanks it will be for your fears to rush into and kind of get magnified. Mm-hmm. Do you guys use the same kind of schedule format for every client, or you use different kind of things?
It's the same schedule, and everybody's schedule is going to be different. Not everybody works 8 to 4. They might work a 3 to 11 or an overnight. So go on. So we want to encourage them to fill their schedule, but not fill it to overload. So we encourage self-care in there. We encourage to put the...
What's self-care anyways?
Self-care. What do you like to do? Do you like to go for long walks on the beach after dinner at sunset? Does that help you? We are in recovery for a reason, I think, to have a good life, right? Right.
How do you know where that balance is between too much to do and not enough? I mean, it sounds kind of tricky to me.
It is tricky. Yeah. But if you're listening to what we are explaining here, I think the most important thing that we do is listen to our body.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What, like I'm hungry?
Yeah.
Okay, come on, I'm being silly. All right, so tell me more what you mean. So you're saying you're saying that if we really want to know if the schedule's working or not, we can find the answers
within you.
Okay, so explain.
So if I'm working and I'm after work, I'm cooking dinner and I'm getting ready, for the night to settle in, and I know I have to, go to a meeting, or I'm taking care of others, because that's like a lot of what people do is like we, like to take care of other people instead of paying attention to ourselves.
So how do you feel that? Where do you feel that in the body?
So I think we feel that, in our gut.
Like a tension?
Are we tired?
Yeah.
It goes back to hungry, inkly, lonely, tired.
Right.
Right? So if we're listening to our body and our body's like, all right, just, do one more thing, and we're too tired to do it, and we're crawling across the finish line, that's too much.
Right. Simple but not easy.
Right.
Well, I can think of a client that went back. She's going to conquer sobriety, and she just worked so hard that she worked herself into drinking again. And it's hard to imagine you can work so hard to actually create self-harm, but maybe I just learned something. Maybe I'll just tell her next time to listen to her body, Tired, hungry, cranky, feeling tense, She did actually say something similar. She said, I went to the beach and I've been trying to help a couple people, and I felt like this bad feeling in my chest, and I knew that I was doing too much. So she is learning, I guess, as I recall. So how about, there's so much to talk about, not enough time, but how about clients dealing with a work environment where they go back and people know they've been away and now they're coming back sober? I mean, they're not, that work environments aren't allowed to release that information. No one's supposed to know, but you are going back as a very different person, and you can get treated very differently. Do we ever talk about that with them? I'm sure we do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In what way?
So, a lot of clients like that, they don't want people to know, and how do you do that? So how do you do that is you continue to take care of yourself, and you walk in with your chin up, and you do your work. And if you're being treated fairly or poorly, really, I think that they can have that conversation with the person.
Like, how might it go?
Well, it can go either way,
million different ways.
Right? So
I was kind of thinking like maybe after work get together, and someone says, "Whoa, have a drink," and you go, "No," and "Whoa, what's the matter? You can't drink anymore."
Maybe that person doesn't go.
Right. I mean, I tell clients, if you don't have an answer, if the thought of that situation makes you really uncomfortable, you shouldn't go.
Yeah.
Why put yourself in that kind of stress?
I'm sure eventually they'll ask why you're not coming out after work for whatever.
Well, you can make up a story for that. Yeah, I had something I had to do. So most people are okay about it. I think in this day and age, some people are they don't know when to be quiet and to stop asking. People like that, sometimes you have to be a little more direct with. Or, okay, I'm not talking about this. And by the way, how about those Red Sox? You bring up the little pivot, and talk about something else. And if they don't get it, then it's just so much on them,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So anything else we want to talk about now? I mean, we've been at this for a little while, like helping people in the profession return to their profession. Mm-hmm. Do we ever interact with their employers to help pave the way?
In my experience, most clients will say that they will talk to their EAP. We try to set them up with that. We allow them to make that phone call. Because sometimes they do. They want to call before they get back to work and say, hey, I'm going to need a little bit of help here. So. Yeah,
and if they're lucky enough to have EAP understands all this stuff, can really carry the ball for you. And do that protecting and guiding and supporting, and also interactions maybe with HR,
right.
If there's any issues around that. Okay, so I don't know, anything else we haven't talked about in regards to that stuff?
I don't think so.
The only thing we didn't talk about that I thought we should talk about was how you, the case management person, and I, the clinician, work together. But I don't know, it's not a hard and fast thing. It's pretty fluid, right?
It's very fluid.
What kind of stuff do you depend on the clinical team for? That might or might not deliver, right?
A lot. I mean, where is the person at mentally? Like, what's going on? What might be their best option after
What's
treatment.
realistic?
What's realistic, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you and I have ever disagreed over that stuff, but that can be something that's very important for us to do. If a client's simply not ready or is ill prepared, that we can meet as a team to talk to them in a way that's supportive but directive, because it is kind of normal to want to get back to work and to get back into it in the full swing, and it is very common for people to often take on too much at the beginning. We want them to slow down and really build in their self-care and make it kind of a habit.
I think that when we work as a team too, when we do have a client that's, I want to go here, I want to do this, I want to go home, get back to work.
Yeah.
And we're feeling maybe that might not be the best option. I think that once we sit down and we speak with them, and tell them what we see and talk about how they feel about that. I feel like they're pretty responsive. Once they're left to think about what their decision will ultimately be.
Right.
I find that they've been responsive and it's been helpful for them.
Well, the key is framing the intervention in a way that helps them hear it and thinking about that ahead of time. And I think we're very good about that. And sometimes we will get the spouse or significant other involved in framing of that message. That's sort of in the art, not science category of treatment, which is very, very important because as we tell clients all the time that you can have the very, very best treatment plan and transition plan in the world, but if the client themselves aren't buying into it, it's worthless. There has to be some buy-in from the client, and so that's really what's most key.
So that's why we talk about application of the things that they're learning here, so that taking what they're learning,
right?
Whether it's a group, in a session, applying to their life now while they're here, and able to take that out there with them.
Right. So it's not just something we're making you do to keep you busy. Okay. So the next time we get together, I think it'd be just as interesting to talk about how we're helping people at the other end of the spectrum.
Sure.
Because there's so many clients that have no money, they're on their parents' insurance, they're very young, developmentally delayed, have very unrealistic expectations about work, and they really don't know how to take care of themselves, and yet they're supposed to go out in the world and live independently, and they haven't learned how to do that yet. How do we pull off that little miracle,
It happens.
Well, yeah. So we'll talk about that the next time. So I guess it's been great,
Thanks.
Great work. All right. Thank you so much.